run away with me. Lost souls in revelry.
Welcome, Renegades, Rebels, and Outlaws, to episode 5 of the Chong Show with Foxyheals, back for our summer edition of the show here for July and August. Foxyheals, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Fantastic. Ready to cover a lot of different topics here on the show today. We have the Dev water cooler post for the changes to gearing for PvP and League. We have some changes for Outlaw Hearthstone, which is right around the corner here. Some Halls of Lore news, and of course we have discussion about AFC 3 and our reactions to AFC 2. A lot has transpired since the last show where we interviewed Herlock, the guild master of Stormwind Raiders, retired. So let's jump right into it here with the Dev water cooler post, gearing up for Legion PvP. So just to summarize it, for those of you that haven't read the post, Instance PvP will now reward a random piece of gear similar to how it works now, but that will be the only way to gear. The higher your rating for rated gear, it's going to be better for you, obviously. If you're in rated arena, if you're in rated battlegrounds, you're going to get the best gear. It's going to be on par with mythic gear for PvE. And that's pretty much it. We were wondering for a long time, and I think we discussed in episode 1 how the gearing is going to work for Legion PvP. Foxy, what do you think about these changes?
Uh, I think it's gonna be a work in progress. I think it's gonna be it's gonna be need to be tweaked, and honestly, man, I think it's just be more complicated than what it needs to be. They just need to stick with the system now, the way they have it, and make some minor changes here and there, and keep on trucking.
I agree, and I think Blizzard does this too much. They overcompensate. They make these huge changes, and then they end up regretting them in the long run. So I think, as you said, the prestige system would be great, but in addition to that, just keep the gearing format as it is now. But the change is going to occur. They are going forward with it. So let's talk about how this affects SNF and how this affects World PvP. For SNF, the item level advantage limit is going to be decreased to a 15 item level advantage. Keep in mind that only applies to gearing outside of the guild. So if you run arena with us or you do rated battlegrounds with us and you get a 50 item level advantage, just as an example, it's not going to matter. But if you gear outside of the guild, it's going to have to be 15 or lower. And for this upcoming autumn season at SNF is going to be PvP gear only. PvE gear will be prohibited. Now this may change once we get into the winter spring season of 2017, but for the autumn season it will be PvP gear only. We'll simplify it that way. Next up, how this affects World PvP. So for the first time since Mists of Pandaria, PvE gear, heroic and up, will be better than PvP gear for World PvP. Now, in my opinion, strategy and organization should affect this uh, in a way that it's going to offset any advantages that PvEers are going to have. And let's be honest, there's not many mythic PvEers on Vash Frostwolf. So gearing for PvE for World PvP is encouraged. I encourage all of our core members to do it. And I think it gives us an incentive to do PvE in Legion. So that should be cool as things progress. Heading into 2017, maybe we'll have a raid night or whatever else. And I think it'll be cool. It'll give people more to do within the game instead of just focusing on PvP. It'll open up that PvE app. So changes to World PvP, SNF. Foxy, any thoughts before we move on?
It's going to be a interesting year.
Yeah, when we dealt with this before in Mists of Pandaria, we adapted. You had PvE geared players coming in and doing extremely well in SNF. So it'll be interesting to see what transpires here with these changes in the upcoming SNF seasons on the horizon. Moving on here, another big event season that's coming up is Outlaw Hearthstone, and there are a lot of changes for that as well. Uh, Starting with Tavern Brawl and Wild Tournament. Each month we're going to have one Tavern Brawl tournament, one Wild tournament. You use one deck, and that's it. You win it all with that deck, or you lose it all with that deck. One fall for each round of the tournament. Standard will obviously be the format for traditional tournaments. And in semifinal best of three matchups, you will be able to ban one of your opponent's deck. Overall thoughts on the changes for Hearthstone coming up here this?
I'm looking forward to some Tavern Brawl tournaments. I think that'd be a blast. But I'm just I'm ready to get this Hearthstone going, ready to start kicking some ass.
Speaking of kicking ass, I've kicked your ass probably the last 4 or 5 times we faced off. Are you worried about some rust there heading into the new season?
No, not too much. You know, I have to go easy on you, keep your motivation up to play. So, you know.
Well, as the defending 2015 champ, I have enough motivation to retain my title this season coming up here, and I have no doubt that there may be a back-to-back winner for the first time ever in Outlaw Hearthstone. It'll be interesting. The roster is, of course, myself, Foxyheals. We have Aleth, who is making his debut. Sprite, probably the best player on the roster, a veteran of card games like Hearthstone. Bruiser may be making an appearance, maybe M. Big will obviously be back. He has improved a lot since the last time. And really, I think the overall exciting thing for this season is that everybody can use their own custom decks. Last season, it was all basic decks. You couldn't really mix it up that much. This season is going to be crazy. Everybody's going to be using their favorite decks. It should be competitive. Moving on here to the Halls of Lore, we have some news for that. Night Song, Heart of War Part 2, and Edge of Darkness will be coming soon here. Those are the next three short stories and novellas that are going to be released on the Guild site. If you want some backstory on some of the officers and of past and present that are on the Guild website that are taking part in these events, that will be up on the Halls of Lore form. And then in the gallery tab on the guild site, the characters of war will be completed with full bios for each character this August. So if you haven't looked up the gallery tab, if you haven't looked up characters of war, highly recommend it. Gives a summary of each character's backstory, and has some really cool artwork as well that I've found that suits each character as well. So that's the big changes for Halls of Lore. I will say this, that Edge of Darkness is centered around Amelia. Night Song, I'm not going to reveal who that's about yet. That will likely be released in July. And Heart of War Part 2, obviously about Shanoosh, and that will be in the aftermath of the conflict for Kalimdor later this August.
I like M's picture on there, Characters of War.
Yeah, like I said, if you have a character in the guild and they're renegade or above, they're likely in there uh, to some degree. I know Garland's in there, Bruiser isn't in there yet, Smokey is. So if you're listening and you have an important character, officer, whatever, check. Between those three, which one are you looking forward to the most, Fox? I will say
Uh,
Night Song is going to be centered around a another returning legend, and I would compare it to The Phoenix Rises, which was about sharp swords, as far as its importance.
I can't say I'm going to look forward to any one in particular more than the others. I'm looking forward to any of them. I enjoy reading them, so I look forward to all of them.
Now, obviously, recently, I haven't had all the time in the world to read probably the newer ones that have been posted. For those of you that don't know, Foxyheals just welcomed a new addition to the family. So, congratulations, Foxy. I'll congratulate you here on the show officially.
Thank you, sir.
And obviously, a lot of time being dedicated to that. So, have some catching up to do within the halls of lore, I would imagine. Just a
Yeah. Uh, I'll catch up eventually. I think I'm on. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it now. Give me a second.
And I think a lot of people know about the Halls of Lore. I think everybody on the roster right now knows about it. But if you haven't given it a try, check out the short stories that are there. It's just a great way for me to kind of flesh out some of the characters and the big movers and shakers that we have. It ties in some just new lore or whatever backstory they may not have known with stuff that the characters themselves have done within the guilds. Great way to provide some additional content on the guild site. I've enjoyed writing all the short stories, and as I said, we have three more coming up later this summer. Foxy, do you have an update?
Ah, yes. Uh, I'm about halfway through Defender of Casmadan, so I'm getting there slowly.
All right, so moving on here, we have the meatiest part of the show here so far. We have AFC 3, but before we get into AFC 3, I want to talk about AFC 2. Now, last episode we recorded where it was just Foxy and I talking about events and going ons within the guild. A lot of stuff changed with the War Games and with AFC 2. Uh, this one, though, AFC 3 coming up here, nothing's going to change. Fight card's going to be locked in. But let's give our reactions first on AFC 2 and then the changed War Games, which was originally supposed to be Chong versus Amelia, ended up being Javar versus Amelia. And Foxy was on the winning team. Javar, yours truly, led Team Renegade to a smashing victory. And Foxy, I really can't imagine it going down any other way. And I think your prediction was pretty spot on with that as well.
Yeah, he gave a valiant effort, but just not enough experience in the young lad. But he did good for his first time.
And then following that, we had War Game 6. You were not on for that. The internet was down. But the Horde won the first ever Horde versus Alliance War Games. Uh, History was made. The recap was posted on the forums. Got a very good reception from that. And the most important thing that comes out of that, aside from the fact that it's the first server event we've held in a long time, also that Myself and Smokey are both undefeated. Smokey is now 4-0 in the War Games, and I am 6-0. So Smokey gonna defend that undefeated streak this fall, and we'll announce his opponent later on this year. Moving on to AFC 2 reactions. The most notable main event outcomes of the night: Big Dad defeated Chanute. I know we talked about this at length. We originally recorded episode 3 and we re-recorded it, but on there with Big as Resto, you and M, who was our guest there, both predicted that Big would win. Watching the majority of the fight, did it play out the way you thought it would?
Uh, yes and no. Yes, I thought Big was going to come out, throwing Moonfire and some Wrath and try and keep some pressure on you. But I didn't think he was gonna to bring it to that extent to where he was just all over you and Shanush had no room to breathe, no way to get his health back up, and Big was just ruthless that night. It was fun to watch.
And for Big Dad, really just the pinnacle of his storied career, combining both Heels and Moonfire, the two things that have won him all three of his titles, whether he was a Moonkin in Deathmatch finale or whether he was healing and winning via the roll. Combined both of the best aspects of his styles to win, defeat Shanush, and as we know, that fight was with the careers of both these legendary fighters on the line. Shanush retired from 1v1 action. Obviously, he got his revenge in War Game 6. And then before that, we had that epic back and forth brawl that took place and spanned all across the arena. We had Cathautus defeating you, and I think the shift came. You could pinpoint it to when Foxyheals switched to Shadow. Obviously, you now regret that decision, I'm sure.
Oh yes, a big regret there. But I was trying to have some fun and and spice things up a little bit, and it backfired and bit me in the ass. So lesson learned, and But anyway, it was fun. So
So both these fights and the recap for both of them up on the guild side. I believe the recap for AFC 2 is in news and announcements, the full fight recap, and then also both these fights have been added to the arena history of Black Rock Mountain. Was a hell of a night, AFC 2. A lot of big historic moments. Bruiser defeating Smokey, Amelia defeating Sprite, and McGregor defeating Doc Stew. So keep all those outcomes in mind here as we shift to AFC 3, which will take place this July. We'll start with the opening fight of the evening. It will be Doc Stew versus Yacht, Disc Priest versus Hunt. Doc Stew has improved quite a bit since the loss to McGregor at AFC 2. We saw Doc fight with you in the final tournament of the SNF season, the winter spring season for this year. And we have Yacht, who will be making their AFC debut. So Doc is seemingly back in top form, and as I said, this is Yacht's AFC debut. How do you think this one's going to go down, partner?
let me shut my door and make sure she's not listening. But I think Doc's got this one. Uh, I mean, I have all the confidence in the world in Yacht's ability to play and defeat people, but having playing a disc priest for a number of years now, I don't uh, I don't see an answer for the bubbles, and that's the one thing that's going to be her downfall. So,
All right, moving on to Bruiser versus Sprite, Frost versus Frost, Death Knight versus Mage. Coming off that loss to Amelia, is this a must-win for Sprite?
Most definitely. He needs to get his confidence back up, and I think he's going to come in with a whole bunch of fire, and he's going to bring out some tricks that he probably hasn't used before, and I think we're going to see a very good matchup.
And next up, we have Foxyheals versus Smokey the Bear, originally scheduled for AFC 2. Move things around on the fight card, so if you want a backstory recap on this, check out episode 3 of the Chong Show with Foxyheals. I go in depth on it. All things considered, the clinic that Smokey the Bear put on against Bruiser had that legendary ring, popped all of his cooldowns. Smokey went all the way down to 15%, healed himself back up, and Smokey has just put on a clinic this season as the Druid. Unkillable as heals, fantastic damage output, probably the most dynamic killer that we have seen since you debuted. Smokey really has it all. He's undefeated in the War Games, has a championship under his belt. I think this one's going to be back and forth, and I think it's ultimately going to come to the rolls, but I am really looking forward to seeing two of the most diverse healers going toe to toe here. Foxy and Smokey, the damage that they both have, it's just a perfect matchup, heals versus heals. And if Smokey goes feral, all the better. I think it's going to be interesting to see what he can do as feral. But in the end, this one is going to be too close to call and predict. So I'm not going to make any predictions there. I'll leave it up in the air. AFC 3 will be on July 9th. And we'll find out there once the dust settles for that historic matchup. Should be a class. And then moving on here, we have two of the winners from AFC 2. We have Cathaudus and Amelia facing off for the number one contender spot. This one's interesting, and the backstory, I could talk about it for an hour here if I wanted to. It just writes itself. Two fighters determined for a title shot. They have very similar storylines. Both of them have flawless attendance in SNF. Both of them really have come so close to being legends. Specifically talking about Kath, he just came so close so many times. Couldn't get the number of championships that would have really cemented his place. Now has the chance to rise up and get a rematch against either Big or Javar in September or October for AFC 4. On the other hand, you have Amelia. Flawless attendance, really came close but never broke into the championship tier of the tournament. This is a chance for both these fighters to take the next step and seize the opportunity at a championship that has eluded both of them for so long. Also, the play styles are very similar for these two. Both of them have a very slow, methodical, yet flashy style. They hammer you with a bunch of really flashy abilities. They build up for the KO and then they unload. So how do you think this one's going to play out here? You have that showmanship from Kath up against the innovative style of Amelia, who uses every part of the arena with the portals and everything else. How do you think this one's going to go down, and who do you think's going to win?
Uh, Honestly, I think it's going to come down to who makes the least amount of mistakes. Like I said, M bounces all over the arena. Kath is kind of a methodical, chase you down type guy. Uh, I think this one's going to be close, but I think M might pull it off. Depending on what spec he goes, I think M might pull it off. Uh, if he goes with destruction, I think he's going to have a harder time. But I think M has a good chance on this one.
I think this one's going to be a heartbreaker for either one of these guys, whoever loses. It's going to be a heartbreaker, especially for Kath, because Kath is really on a part-time, so to speak, schedule now. He's really just showing up for the big events. And the narrative here is that, this would be the storybook ending for Cathatus to make a last run and just to fight for the championship at a big AFC event. But I think it's going to be a heartbreaker and a loss for Cathatus here. I think M as Affliction is just going to be too elusive, going to move around, dance around, and ultimately wear down Cathatus. I think it's going to be a drawn out fight. I think Kath is going to do his damnedest to keep himself up, but I just think Amelia has too many slippery ability and too much consistent damage. He's going to be able to port, get some dots up, port back around. Kath has lay on hands. He has all those self heals, but eventually I think Amelia's going to win the battle of attrition. I think Cathatus' only hope is if he changes some things around with his and just get some practice in, and then if he can somehow get on top of M, get his stun in. But it's going to be hard to do. It's really going to be hard to do. I've played against M, and he is slippery. So we will see who wins. But my prediction goes with Foxyheals here. I'm going to say that Amelia wins that one, and will go on to AFC 4 to face off for the championship for the first time ever. First title opportunity. And finally, moving on here to the main event of AFC 3 here in Tenerife this July. We have the defending champion Big Dad up against Javar, who was moved up into the number one contender spot after Foxyheals lost to Cathalda at AFC 2. This will be the fifth meeting between these two, and Javar currently leads the series 3-1. Javar, throughout this entire past year, we've seen him just dismantle Big Dad. Towards the end of all their encounters, Big Dad does a valiant effort, put forward a valiant effort throughout the majority of the fight, and then towards the end, Javar brings the hammer down. The only thing that's really changed here is Big Dad does have his legendary ring now. So I'll put it to you now, Foxy. Do you think that legendary ring is going to make that much of a difference? And secondly, what's your pick for this?
I think the legendary ring is going to maybe give him a little bit boost to survive the end burst from Javar. But that's if it procs, of course. Actually, I don't know if the legendary ones do proc. Do they proc, or is it a continuous thing?
I'm not sure. I think it may proc, but
Either way, either way. I don't know if it's going to be enough to keep him alive, though. As you said, the the fuck, I can't talk, man. Jesus, I'm gonna cut that part out.
have a
Anyway,
snicker.
okay. Have a Snickers. The current standing is 3-1. So I think Bay's going to give it a valiant effort, but I'm going to stick with Javar, just simply because that ground and pound is so strong, and it's hard to mitigate. But I got my fingers crossed for Big. I hope he wins. I hope he survives. At least gets it to the rolls. You know. But prediction wise, I'm gonna go with Javar.
Now, the AFC 3 post, you can catch that on the Guild site. All the background information on that is there. The theme for the event, Kashmir by Led Zeppelin. It's going to be a phenomenal fight card. I really, when I look through this fight card, I see all of them as being fast paced, close, down to the wire, and it's really anyone's game there for the majority of these fights. We have Foxyheals predicting that Doc Stew will triumph over Yacht. We have my prediction. I'll give it right now for this one. I think Bruiser is going to dismantle Sprite. Uh, could be an upset there. I could see Sprite, like Foxy predicted, pulling out some new tactics. But ultimately, I think Bruiser's just too damn powerful, and his legendary is going to be built up even more by the time they face off. So I think Bruiser goes to 2. Foxy versus Smokey, I did not give a prediction of this. I think it's going to be too damn close. It could go either way. We have Cathatus versus Amelia, both of us predicting that Amelia will win. And finally, Big Dad versus Javar. Foxy predicting that Javar will win a 9th championship. Could be 10th championship, depending on how the playoffs shape up here. But that concludes our predictions for AFC 3 here. Again, that will be July 9th, Saturday at 6 p.m. server, live from Tenerife. Could be the Thunderdome, could be Zul'Farrak. We may switch it up a bit, but most likely both those historic arenas will be used. And you can find, as with most of the significant arenas for SNF history, you can find that all in the Halls of Lore, the arena histories for Black Rock Mountain, Ring of Trials, and the Grand. It's all. So that'll do it for AFC 3. And finally here, before we conclude with the end of the show, want to just give a quick announcement here. This summer, the second ever Q&A will be held, this time pertaining to World PvP campaigns and the Centurion Overlord ranks, the system revolving around the Centurion and Overlord positions that you can obtain now within the guild for participating in those World PvP campaigns. Be sure to mail your questions to Guildmaster Chong in game or message me on Facebook to have them answered later in the July-August period by our panel of generals and myself. It will be Big Dad, Foxyheals, and yours truly, obviously. And we will answer all the questions that are put forward. We will also talk about everything there is to cover for the World PvP campaigns and the new rank. Also, coming up later on the next episode, episode 6 of the Chong Show with Foxyheals, following our, what I think was a fantastic walk through memory lane with Herlock, we will be interviewing the Guardian of Cenarius, Big Dad. That should be one hell of an interview. You've heard from Big Dad before in the Q&A. You obviously are familiar with him if you've done any events with us. He is a pillar of the game. But we'll really delve into how he got started into the game, his best memories as a healer, favorite opponents, everything that you've wanted to know about Big Dad. It will all be asked on episode 6. And we also got Glenn Moreau, possibly Well Dog, lined up for the fall interviews. So should be fantastic in the months to come here. The Chong Show with Foxyheals rolls on. Anything you want to leave the viewers and listeners with before we close out here, Fox?
No, I'm pretty sure here soon, or I might try and sneak in an extra show here. Or a Warcraft movie comes out this weekend, I do believe, or the weekend that we're recording this. So might try and sneak in an extra show here to get a review of the movie. if we can talk Chong into taking his girlfriend out to watch it.
Hey, you know what? We'll see if we can get a couple other people in. I know M's going to see it. Big's likely going to see it. I don't know. He may watch it when it comes out on DVR or whatever. But we'll see who is going to see the movie. We'll see if we can get a panel together and we'll all discuss our opinions. Sounds good to me.
Alrighty. Once again, thanks guys for listening, and see y'all next time.
Run away here with me. Lost souls in revelry. Running wild and running free. Just two kids, you and me. And I say, hey.